Cobre is one of the award-nominated companies, obviously, but it's also the smallest one, I think, with $32 million in market cap, but really interesting portfolio of copper assets in Botswana and Western Australia. Really looking forward to this presentation. I'll bring Martin on stage in just 60 seconds.
Right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your time here. Firstly, I'd like to say thanks to Willem and also Commodity Discovery Fund for having me here. What you just witnessed there is Cobre's vision, and I don't think it's only Cobre's vision, but it's a vision for a lot of exploration companies out there. And I think what a lot of investors should actually take note on is that without exploration, there's no new discoveries. And without new discoveries, there's no path at all to net zero 2050. So when you make an investment into an exploration company, you should actually consider it as that being an overall ethical investment, as well as a way to actually get a return out of your money. So today we're going over to Botswana, which is known as the Kalahari Copper Belt. Flick through the disclaimer here, and I'll go straight into the corporate snapshot. So this company, out of all the talks that's here at this event, is the lowest market capitalisation at present. So it's around about 31 million Australian dollars. We have circa around about 280 odd million shares on issue. We have a cash position at present of around $9 million. And we have a larger shareholder being Metal Tiger with around 20%, and Commodity Discovery with around about 8% as our second largest shareholder. I personally am around the third or fourth largest shareholder with around 4% of the company. Actually, I'll just go back to that slide. Since we're here talking about discoveries, you can see this chart here, which shows the share price performance. And we did have quite a significant copper discovery in Botswana. As soon as that happened, the share price went from around 10 cents to circa around 70 cents a share. In one day in particular, the volume kicked in with around about $42 million traded in one day. So there's been quite a large amount of volume traded in the stock over the period. It's fallen off at present, though we are still doing a huge amount of exploration, and there's quite a significant amount of results due pending at present. And the company itself has around about 2,000 shareholders to date. So the company itself, I'm the executive chairman of the company. I've been involved in a whole range of exploration companies over the last sort of 15 years. I've got a banking sort of corporate finance and capital markets experience. Though over those 15 years, I've learned enough about geology to be dangerous at that level, even though I'm not a geologist. We also have Adam Woolridge, who is the CEO of the company. He is a geologist and also a geophysicist. He worked for BHP back in the day on this project, on this area. We've also got a Dr. Ross McGowan, who is based in South Africa. He's an important for the board and also from a technical perspective. Talking about team and large discoveries, he got the Lindsay Award for the discovery of Kamoa, which was the largest sort of copper discovery, highest grade discovery, which was found by Ivanhoe. And he's a great credit to have on our team, which shows like the scale potential that we've got here in Botswana. As we move forward here, we are a copper-focused explorer. So it's all about the new age metal, the battery metal. And if you look around all different deposits in the world, like the grade of copper is actually depleting in grade. So the average global grade at present is about 0.6% copper. And across the board, the overall mine life is also decreasing as well. We are in a position now that we've got our main asset being in Botswana, that we have also a project, which is the VMS project in copper in Australia, and we've got some exposure to a project in Gabon as well. But in this presentation, I'm going to focus purely on Botswana. So it's known as the Kalahari Copper Belt. So the Kalahari Copper Belt itself, this area is a huge, large area. You're talking around 6,000 square kilometres of land that we own in the Kalahari Copper Belt. Cobre, the company, which is a Spanish word for copper, owns 100% of this tenure. We've actually gone through this whole process to get to that, so that's quite a milestone for the company to be in this position now. And we are the second largest landholder in this belt, which is a new prospective belt for copper, outside of Sandfire Resources, which is a $3.5 billion market cap company in Australia, and the code of that is SFR. And there's a private company called Tribute Kenyan, which is now up for sale, and we're expecting some large M&A activity to happen in the belt over the next sort of half a year or so. Once that M&A activity happens, there will literally be Cobre being the second largest landholder of the belt. You'll have Sandfire, which is currently producing at present, and then you'll have a company, Tribute Kenyan, owned by like another major company, which is also in production. So 2 production companies plus an exploration company. It's worth also noting that the US Geological Survey rated this belt as the most emerging and one of the most prospective areas to discover yet to be discovered sedimentary hosted copper deposits globally. So as I mentioned, our licenses are quite strategic. Our license is here in the green. Sandfire is in that orangey pinky colour, salmon colour. And Tribute Kenyan is in the light blue colour. It's worth noting here, I heard Equivest with her presentation earlier on in regards to where are you on the actual belt itself. It's worth noting that we're on the whole northern basin margin of the belt, which is the place you want to be, and also on the southern side of it as well. This is where all major new discoveries are actually found, on these basin margins. It's quite interesting from a scale perspective here. Like it's hard to comprehend, but we have 500 kilometres worth of strike. So you're talking like 500 kilometres, a whole new district of this contact that we own, which is owned 100% by the company. That's caused like a few issues as well in regards to where do you focus, and this is why we're here now, because we have actually focused in after years of exploration. It's turned into an overnight success with some recent drilling that we've done. So I'll touch on this here being the district scale opportunity that you see here. So once we're in this position, you're looking at 2 large areas that we're really targeting now, which we've broken down the 6,000 square kilometres to around 2,600 square kilometres. As I mentioned earlier, there's 500 kilometres worth of strike. Across the whole tenure, and this is why it's really important from a discovery perspective, is that we're exploring under 50 metres of sand cover. So it's extremely difficult to find these new discoveries once there's pretty much nothing at surface. So there's been a huge amount of analysis done, a lot of soil work, the latest geochemistry. We've also done a collaboration agreement with Sandfire Resources, that $3.5 billion company that I mentioned, in an aerial gradient gravity survey, which is going to be completed for the first time over the whole belt. And they're spending around $6.5 million on this survey, and they're funding 50% of our costs, and we're sharing our data with them, and they're sharing their data with us. And I actually believe in these sort of large-scale belts, it's all about collaboration. So you need as many minds as possible working together to get a positive outcome that you're looking to achieve. So this is where it starts to get to talking about a bit of grade. I think what's important here to note is that these grades that you're seeing on the screen here is actually all in chalcocite mineralisation. So that might not mean a lot to most of the people here, but from a chalcocite mineralisation perspective, it's the highest grade copper you can get. So, and it's the highest grade from a recovery perspective from and overall metallurgical perspective as well. So you have chalcocite being number 1, and then you have bornite being number 2, and then you have chalcopyrite being number 3. So this is purely dominated by chalcocite mineralisation, which is going to be really favourable for us when we start doing some met work on this deposit that we're unlocking. It's worth noting here the scale. So you can see the name there saying Comet. That scale of that little circle there isn't so little. You're talking around 5 kilometres of strike length there. And we're actually doing exploration, not like other companies where you do small step outs. We actually started exploration here by doing 1 kilometre step outs. And every hole that we drill, which is diamond hole drilling, hit mineralisation. Then we stepped another kilometre out, we hit mineralisation. We stepped another kilometre out, we hit mineralisation. We stepped another kilometre out, we hit mineralisation. And this actually became quite fascinating from an exploration perspective. We then started tightening it in, and tightening in, it was still like a 500 metre step in between those, and we did a 250 metre step in between those. And we're now in the position that we're starting to understand the size potential of that area itself. But what's really intriguing by this shape here that you see all the way from the top there being Cosmos down to Asteroid down the bottom, to the other side, Helios, up to Interstellar. If you look at that, it's almost like a banana shape. And that banana shape is around 80 kilometres worth of strike. And out of 47 holes that we've drilled there, which is all diamond hole drilling, we've actually hit 48 holes, has hit anomalous copper mineralisation throughout that whole zone area. So this is where it starts to get fascinating about how large is this actual deposit? Can this all join together? Will this be a globally significant deposit? What I can say right now is that we've hit some very interesting results. So we hit 9.3 metres at around 3.4% copper. We've stepped out further and we've hit more mineralisation all the way along. And the lowest grade sort of copper that we're getting is sort of 0.4 to 0.5, but you're consistently getting that 1 to 1.5% hits as well throughout the belt. So Comet here, I would say, would be the reason why Commodity Discovery invested to start off with. This was the discovery hole that we had. As I said, this was like a major milestone for the company. You're talking 50 metres of sand cover, trying to unlock a new copper discovery in an environment that there is very little copper discoveries being found globally at all. So this was a 12.2 metre, as I mentioned, at 2.5% copper, and we've got a credit there as well of around 24 grams per tonne silver. We're expecting that to possibly average around 40 grams per tonne silver throughout the belt. At the intersection itself included a high-grade zone of around 1.7 metres at 11% copper. So you can tell here that the whole belt itself is extremely mineralised. So what we've done now is that's all those slides that I was showing you before is around 1,000 square kilometres, and we're now shifting slightly to the left, which is around 2,500 square kilometres. In this area, we've identified a new target, and the new target is called Clo. And this is a Afrikaans word, I guess, or a bushranger's word, and means elephant in Africa. And we actually see this as a very large target. You're talking around 6 kilometres long by sort of 6 kilometres wide. We've completed a whole range of soil sampling across this. So there's been thousands and thousands and thousands of samples. We're still actually collecting them at present. But interestingly, we've actually received those assays back, and this target itself has shown anomalous copper throughout the whole target. Why this is interesting for us from an exploration perspective is that we have an air core rig that just arrived on site today. We're expecting that to start. We're expecting to start exploration within the next day or so there, which will be around 10,000 metres of drilling that will occur from this week onwards. This here has the potential to unlock a whole new system in itself. You're talking an area that has no sand cover at all, so this is all outcropping Quabe in this area. And it was quite fascinating actually that this area in itself, if you look back on the old reports, said it all had 50 metres of sand cover throughout the whole Kalahari. But when our team actually went out there and started walking, we could see there was no cover, it was very thin cover, and there was actually outcropping areas in that region. So we've got this new target that we're drilling now. And on the previous targets that I talked about, we've actually completed 5,000 metres of diamond drilling on those targets. That's happened since January of this year. That program is now finished, so we've done like an extensive amount of diamond drilling on that program. and we're expecting assays to come back in the middle of May. So that's going to be quite a milestone moment for the company on that project. So we have 5,000 metres of diamond drilling due assays, and we've just commenced now a 10,000 metre air core program. And in parallel with that, we'll have that aerial gravity gradient survey coming out with the results of that in collaboration with Sandfire. So we're in a period now that we're going into a strong news flow period where we've been a bit quiet for the last sort of few months doing the work that we need to do on ground. So it's interesting that I had this slide in here, and again, I did mention in regards to Equity Vest's talk, and they said that a lot of juniors don't have an exploration strategy. And I think this is very important that in here in this slide, this shows our strategy very clearly. Here you can see that we look at it from a district scale evaluation perspective, so we look at it all as a whole. And then we break it down and we say, okay, how do we do target generation? So then we go through that process. And you can see there that CLO target that I talked about, that elephant target, is in that target generation stage. We then move along from that, and then there's a target evaluation stage 1, which talks about Cosmos, Asteroid, and Meta, all those other targets I mentioned. Then we move to stage 2 evaluation, which is that Helios and Interstellar, which those results are pending. And then we move to stage 3, which is Comet, which is almost getting to that resource definition process. So we work all the way along that. So we do the airborne geophysics to start off with. We do some diamond drilling, some air core, some RC drilling. We do some detailed multi-element soils and ground gravity diamond drilling. Then we move to the structural and geochemical vectors, infill and step out diamond drilling. And then we do the grid pattern resource drill out. And at that point, that's when you come out with your resource statement. So that's the sort of exploration approach and strategy that we have as a company, which is very systematic and clear. So in regards to timeline, we've done, as I said earlier, we've done all this exploration throughout the first 4 months of this year. It's quite extensive. We're expecting to do a lot more exploration as well through the end of the year. We're going to test to try to find more further high-grade zones throughout the area. But in addition to that, we're also going to be doing some met work behind the scenes to start understanding the chemistry and how it all works from a metallurgical perspective. And then we're also going to be focusing on doing exploration on that large target that I mentioned. So at present, we've completed around 12,000 metres of diamond drilling. It's worth noting we've also got our drillers on site as well, so they're shareholders in the company Cobre. It's important to have them on site because it's quite hard to get your hands on rigs in places like Botswana. So they are very active. They've actually provided us with a brand new air core rig from Australia to come to site, so it's good to have them on site with us. And after that, it comes to the point of unlocking this new district that we're trying to do at present here. So I talked about the team to start off with, but this is our team. These are all sort of geniuses in the sedimentary hosted copper deposit sector. And but again, as I started off this presentation, I think it's really important to note that it's really important from an exploration perspective to find new copper discoveries. And areas like this need the capital and the time and the expertise to find these new discoveries in places like Kalahari. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Wonderful. Martin, thank you so much. Great presentation.
Yeah, thanks.
Really appreciate you coming out.
Sure.
First of all, do we have questions from the audience for Martin before I ask you a few? I don't see any.
There's one over here.
There's one? There's one? Perfect.
Will it be with an open pit?
No, it'll potentially be an underground mine. So it's actually quite steeply dipping, which is quite good for underground mining. So it's dipping at around about 60 degrees throughout the whole area. And the widths you're looking are anywhere from sort of 2 metres to 30 metres thick throughout the whole strike length. Yeah, so as a comparison, you can sort of compare it to a Chemicals project, which is that Kubrick Canyon project that I told you about. Their size is around about 100 million tonnes at 2% copper. And that's the mine that's currently in production along strike. So that's a good comparison to sort of compare us to.
Do we have any other? There's one more. Just wait for the microphone real quick.
Among all reasons to invest in your company, there was also something like an ethical aspect. Have I understood that well?
Yeah.
And can you explore on that, besides exploring on
Sure. So I think
commodities?
I think from an overall ethical perspective, I was talking about that as a whole in exploration. So in exploration as a whole, because as I mentioned earlier, without exploration capital, there is no discoveries, and without new discoveries, all the government talks about going to net zero 2050, it will not happen. So from an ethical perspective, I believe the ethical super funds and things like this should actually be investing more into earlier stage, discoveries and exploration, because without that, there's no new discoveries, there's no metal, and there's no process to that pathway.
Is there some more about ethics? About reinvesting in the...
Just wait for the microphone. Can you repeat yourself for the microphone so our online audience can hear you as well?
Thank you for your answer. Is there some more about ethics in your company? I mean, do you also invest in the surrounding environment where you work, where you explore?
Yeah, sure.
Does the local people
Yes.
profit from your
Yeah, we do, and I've actually got so much time for them as well, because the job and the work that they do is phenomenal. So we've got around 20 local Botswanians working for us at present, and 14 of them, for an example, are out on site in 40-degree heat, collecting 20 kilograms worth of samples day in, day out, and the job that they do is absolutely phenomenal. We also appoint a Botswanian local geologist as well that work in our team. There was a slide earlier on in the presentation which showed a few of them, but we are very supportive with local employment.
Fantastic. I have a question for you now, because I didn't see any other hands go up. Last chance? No. But Martin, massive land package, and you're a small junior exploration company.
Sure.
Right? Are you open to joint ventures with majors? Like, are there any ideas in your head to sort of help get a funding partner on board?
Yeah, so I can say that we have been approached, and it's been announced to the market as well. I've been approached by a number of major companies in regards to this belt. It's actually quite a strategic belt that's unfolding here. There's going to be more M&A activity that happens in the past, and moving forward. But my view at present is that you only own 100% of the project once. So my view is to maximise all shareholders' value, and then get it to a point to bring in a major at some point later on down the track once we've created that value for all of us.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Really good answer to that. Looking forward to some news, obviously, on that front. It's going to be quite exciting.
So one of the majors actually did come out to site, which we did announce, and spent 3 days on site doing analysis of the core, and they're one of the bigger copper companies in the world. So we do have some major interests from those sort of companies. But as I said, let us do the work first, do the drilling, maximise shareholder value, then we go from there.
Absolutely. Keep dilution to a minimum,
Exactly.
of course. And last question, maybe, are you looking more for a strategic partner on the project side, or a joint venture partner, or more on the corporate side?
So at present, there's no real discussion at that level. There has been inbound interest from them, but we're going to just remain focused on doing our work and let them come knocking on our door.
Fantastic. Let them buy in the market.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Martin, thank you so much for joining us.
Great, thank you.
Really appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming out.
Thanks, everyone.